Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending this symposium, The Use of Technology in the Treatment of Schizophrenia. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce the speakers today, who I've met all of them, and I know that they will give excellent presentations. Welcome to the people online for this session also. It's been a really good conference so far, and we look forward to a really good session. So the first speaker will be Professor Adam Abaji from the University of Alberta in Canada. Although I see. Dr. Abaji is going to be the first one, yeah? Dr. Abaji is a friend and colleague. He is currently coming to us from Maiduguri in northern Nigeria, where he is from. And that's good because the time difference between here and Canada is quite large, so he's only 2 hours away. Adam has been at the University of Alberta for a number of years. He's a very active senior psychiatrist who is the director of the section on mood and anxiety disorders. He has a special interest in youth psychiatry in the context of psychosis and schizophrenia, and was the Alberta principal lead for the largest federal child and adolescent psychiatry project in Canada called Access Open Minds, funded at $25 million for the federal government. That has ended and has gone into another phase. Adam today will be talking about innovation in psychiatry, a positive title, Reasons for Optimism. So I'd like you to join me in thanking Adam for coming, and we'll invite him to give his presentation now, please. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Andy, for the kind introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be part of this meeting, and thank you for the invitation. I am calling from the beautiful city of Maiduguri. If anybody knows of it, this is in the northeast of Nigeria, and the temperature is only 35 degrees this morning, so it's a beautiful day. So I was asked to talk about innovations in psychiatry and reasons for optimism. And I thought really the most important part of this presentation must start with a quotation from the WHO, the World Health Organization. The WHO stated that health innovation is to develop new or improvise health policies, systems, products, technologies, services, and delivery methods that improves people's health with a special focus on the needs of the vulnerable population. Frankly speaking, I think the entire part of the conference for the last 3 days is all about this message. So looking at that, I decided to approach the presentation in this way. It's important for us to have reasons to be optimistic about what we have in psychiatry now and what we hope to achieve in psychiatry in the near future. It is important for us to look back historically and see how we made it through some of what people may call the dark days of psychiatry into moving forward to now. And then what sort of hope we've had over the past decades. And then the milestones that we've achieved, it's important to celebrate them today while talking about the reasons to be optimistic. So Martin Luther King said that everything that is done in the world is done by hope. So looking at this, way back in
We'll wait and see what happens. Clearly his internet is frozen. Did he drop out completely? Can't get him back? No, maybe.
Sorry, can you hear me, or what point did I cut off?
You just dropped out for a while, Adam, so we can hear
All
you
right.
now.
Okay. All right.
You were just you were just about to tell us about King George.
All right. In 1808 was the beginning of fight against discrimination and stigma in psychiatry, where the term psychiatry was coined and moving away from the negative term alienism to psychiatry.
Do you want to share your screen again, Adam?
Oh yeah, sure.
Thank you. It's good.
Okay, thank you. So, and then of course in 1897, the causal relationship between a disease and mental illness was being established. And that's when the dementia precoce in 1897. So that threw psychiatry into limelight with big companies investing in the field of psychiatry. In 1954, FDA approved chlorpromazine for the treatment of psychosis. And then in 1955, meprobamate was held as an anxiolytic medication that really helped a lot of people with fluoxetine. And then in 1961, as you go further, amitriptyline was approved. 1988, fluoxetine was the first SSRI that was developed. So these are the trajectory of what has given hope for psychiatry over the last 2 centuries. Now, WHO came with an action plans, and actually this is very, very important for us to look at this, because it is only in 2013 the WHO gave us this action plan for us to look at. So it's important, if we're talking about innovation in psychiatry, it's very important that we should empower people with mental health problems and their family. It's important to build a diverse mental health workforce and to develop a collaborative, multidisciplinary approach to mental health. And then, of course, the next 2 speakers or so are going to talk about the use of technology to improve access to mental health, and then identify and treat mental health problems early, reduce premature mortality in people with mental illness. So if any innovation that is going to come should be based on this framework. And then there was a roadmap for us to get there. So it's important to take initiative and commit to to improving mental health. It is important to review current policies, laws, and plans and change them if needed. It is important to inspire others to drive change and hope and invest wisely in innovations that could dramatically improve mental health. Innovations that can be monitored and evaluated, and they should be patient-centered. And then they went in to say that we should start change now with whatever resources that we have. I like the last point there, that do not let resource constraint stall the progress. This is very, very important. So, it is always, this is Nelson Mandela said that it's always to remember to celebrate milestones as we prepare for the road ahead. Now, the milestone that has been achieved, that behind the hope that we've seen, is the novel therapies for treatment-resistant psychiatric disorders. This includes neuromodulations. It includes psychotherapeutic interventions that are hybrid or solo, or pharmacological interventions such as clozapine and other medications for treatment-resistant psychiatric disorders. And most recently, telehealth during the COVID-19 had actually given us a lot of hope that we can do more with virtual care. And it has pushed us perhaps maybe 10 years, faster than where we were. So it was a huge milestone that we were able to, despite the pandemic, we were able to cover a lot of vulnerable patients during this pandemic. And then, of course, this is the new thing now, the psychedelics to assist treatment of psychiatric disorders. This is a huge hope for patients, especially those who are suffering from trauma and other related disorders. Digital devices are now currently being used in research, and also this is a huge milestone. And then, of course, I'm sure one of the speakers is going to talk about predictive analytics to guide diagnosis, treatment, and policies. So these are huge milestones that we have achieved, and it is a big success for psychiatry. Now, optimism is true moral courage. And to be optimistic, as the topic that we're going to talk about, for us to have reasons for optimism is really to have this moral courage to do things. So the optimism here is the digital symptom tracking. We're quite optimistic now that we do have devices that could track symptoms for patients, and patients can see their symptoms and also share with service providers. The concept of machine learning that has come in the past decade was a huge thing that gave us some optimism to talk about. We're going to talk about some of those successes of machine learning so far. And then the virtual reality for mental health, the use of smartphone assisted therapy, and then pharmacogenetics. Now, for machine learning has offered us a new route of learning patterns of human behavior. This had come with really a lot of opportunities for us to identify mental health symptoms and risk factors and develop predictions about disease progression. This is something really, really remarkable. In fact, one of the things that in psychiatry that we have not really criticized, but seen as a huge gap is for us to offer something that we can use beside clinical judgment to make a diagnosis, something in addition to either confirm or to add more weight to the clinician's judgment in terms of making diagnosis. And the use of machine learning is giving us a lot of hope in terms of able to predict a diagnosis by a certain percentage. You will see some of the data that I'm going to share with you. So, for instance, in a study that was done, this study was done nearly 9 years ago, but there are certain subsequent studies that have come to back this claim that using machine learning, clinicians or researchers are able to discriminate between schizophrenia patients and healthy controls by nearly 90% accuracy. This is, again, giving us reasons to have to be optimistic regarding the possibility of having a diagnostic tool for one of the most serious conditions that we have, which is schizophrenia. Similarly, there are lots of patients who have been misdiagnosed as either having schizophrenia or bipolar or between the two, or sometimes within the spectrum of schizophrenia or having schizoaffective disorder bipolar type. While we can see that the accuracy is 88%, which is still really, really very big, machine learning was able to separate between the patients who have schizophrenia and bipolar with an accuracy of nearly 88%, which is really quite significant if you look at psychiatry and where we have been so far. And then, most importantly, this one is for individuals who have early presentations of psychosis. This is to help us understand the pattern of presentations of childhood onset schizophrenia to predict the prognosis and also to institute early intervention. So, which means now with nearly 74% accuracy, that patients who have had onset of schizophrenia, childhood onset of schizophrenia now, can be differentiated from the healthy controls, which means we can use this technology, this innovation, to screen children who are at risk and see whether or not they could go on to have early onset of psychosis. This is a significant improvement to where we've been before. Now, again, with psychotherapy, one of the most difficult for a patient, how can a patient respond to this treatment or whichever treatment is. So, and it was quite impressive, to read
We'll just wait a minute and see what happens. He came back before. We'll give it 2 minutes to see if he comes back online. 2 minutes is a very long time when you're just waiting. 30 seconds to go.
Sorry, guys. This is part of the things that. But can you hear me now? I'm almost on my last slide, so.
Well, we can hear you, Adam.
All right.
Looks like we'll be able to see you in a second.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So you can see my slides, right?
Yes, all
Yeah.
good.
Okay. So this is almost the last part of our slide. So the challenges that lies ahead is regulations and quality control of some of these new technologies. There's a lot of innovative, very good innovative ideas that are out there. And one of the biggest challenges is how to regulate them and ensure that they have a quality control. And the other thing is privacy. A lot of people have spoken about how it's going to be very difficult using technology to guide patients' privacy. It's going to be very, very difficult. And then the last one is the data reliability, because predictive analytics heavily relies on data. So whatever input that was put into the data is what would be used to create the decision tree and the algorithms. So which means it's very, very important, for us to be more prudent with looking at the data before it is being input into the predictive analytics. So I think this is the last slide, and I want to thank you very much for giving me the time to talk, and apologize for the internet service provider here that I've been struggling with, but thank you.
Because of time, I'd like us to hold some questions for the last part of the session. Adam, you set things up very well for some more detailed windows into some of the technology that's currently available. So I would like you to join me in welcoming Professor Koksal Alptekin, who is a prominent psychiatrist in Turkey working in Izmir, and because Cook is here, I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology sometimes make our works easier, but sometimes stronger. Hello everybody, and sorry, I will do my presentation in Turkish, but I suggest organizing committee to consider all the presentations in English, especially in Hall 1. Herkese merhaba. Ben bugün sizlere daha çok yeni bir teknoloji yöntemi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be speaking about the use of a virtual reality technique in psychiatric diseases. I'm very happy to be here with you today because last year many of the meetings were held online, and the individuals that you see here, they passed away due to COVID-19, and I would like to commemorate them all. Özlem Türeci and Uğur Şahin are two of the scientists who helped us gather together physically here today. Thomas Inser, I would like to show MIMH, the former president. He was transferred to Google, and a few years ago he started his own firm, a psychiatrist in Google, Microsoft, and then starts a firm about computation. So you may ask why or how that could happen. But He is focusing particularly on technology, and I'm sure you all have these smartphones and you monitor the steps, your daily steps, and how you slept at night. You're recording all that information, monitoring all that information. But in addition to that, with the smartphones, there could be other uses, like how many times a day does a schizophrenia patient go outside? How does he or she sleep? Or how many messages he sends per day? So about the behavior and emotions of the patient, you can have lots of feedback through such applications. Collecting, assessing these data and their use in treatment was mentioned by one of the speakers yesterday. We have new endophenotypes. Computational digital phenotype for schizophrenia or digital phenotype for bipolar. Is it the case? We're trying to define those. You can see here the software-enabled clinical trials, the patent studies that were undertaken, and maybe these patent studies could be used in psychiatry soon. So what do? Data is collected, and later these data may be turned into certain software programs for schizophrenic patients, for example. Some software that could change their daily life could be possible in the future. It could be developed. The question is, are schizophrenic patients familiar with smartphones and these applications? This is a study from abroad on this topic. Here you see normal people and schizophrenic patients, general population and schizophrenic patients, and you can see the level for general population. Tech use is shown here from 2007 until 2015. You can see the rate of technology use by people with schizophrenia and general population. So the use of technology is increasing among the schizophrenic patients as well. This is a recent study, 100 patients from Izmir, my city. This study is about whether schizophrenic patients are using some internet programs, applications. Do they have smartphones? This was the purpose. 86% of our patients have mobile phones, 67% of them use computers, and 67% of them have internet at home. So more than half of our patients use smartphones and have computers, and 65% of them have at least one mobile application. 47% of them use social media actively. 55% of them make video calls, and these generally are younger patients. And during the pandemic we used WhatsApp application a lot to help our patients and communicate with them. This data belongs to Izmir, actually, a city in Turkey which is regarded a lot more civilized and technology use is generally higher. But I really would like to learn about these rates in other cities of Turkey as well. And what do the respondents use these applications for? WhatsApp and Facebook, you see, is highly used by our patients, and they use these technologies to learn about ways to cope with the difficulties they have, to understand their symptoms, to communicate with each other, and to find out why the disease developed in themselves, and to increase contact among themselves. And does it work? Using WhatsApp, for example, for communication facilitates the communication between them, just like among the general population. And virtual reality is a recently developed field in technology. The real world, it is an imitation of real world on computer actually. And when we say imitation, it used to be like animations, but right now the humans are also involved, and the metaverse concept, a very recent one, helps create digital identities. And this real world is transferred through the virtual reality, and the individual feels like in a real world actually, and by living that reality some emotions, some experiences come out. And there are many different methods for this: three-dimensional images or augmented virtual reality, which means that including everything that you're in right now, the smell, the image you see, and the environment that you're in, with in a multi-dimensional fashion. And in the past, you can see the mobile phones that were used from 1970s. These are the mobile phones in Turkey, which were just telephones, but smartphones later started to be introduced. And for today, we have VR goggles, and I mean they're very heavy and they do not look very nice and very expensive. But I'm sure that in the close future, these will become more functional and cheaper. So today, in the field of technology, all companies are working to this end. You can see Samsung example here, a tool for virtual reality developed by Samsung. And for fear of height, for fear of flight, we know that virtual reality is very successful to work on these phobias. And creating the environment virtually, this way, those people with flight phobia are able to experience a flight virtually. An interesting study I would like to show you. It is about people with social anxiety disorders. There are three arms here. First of all, we have CBT plus in vitro exposure, CBT plus in vivo exposure, and the waiting list. Control group, I mean. In the control group, nothing is changing, but in the CBT plus in virtuo and in vivo, you can see the results are very similar to one another. So you can see that CBT can be used and can provide you very beneficial outcomes in virtual reality as well. About autistic kids, their empathy is lost. We know that about their parents, and you can see a virtual reality goggle which is being advertised here, and the emotion of the parent can be perceived by the child better by using these goggles. Particularly, it has a function of improving the relationship of the autistic child with his environment. And in schizophrenia, do you think psychosocial functionality could improve? Schizophrenia is a very difficult, challenging disease actually. This is Yasemin's words. The bread was in the lion's mouth. We managed to catch it, take it out of the lion's mouth, and we developed schizophrenia. Living in a society on its own has great challenges, difficulties. And when we say psychosocial functionality, there are many related factors, fields here: self-care and hygiene, relations with the environment, aggression can be included in this, romantic relations, marriage, and vocational functionality, daily activities, and smoking and substance abuse. In this virtual reality environment, this study focuses on a new virtual city for the individual. A new city is created here, and the individual using this application tries to live virtually in this new city, carrying out his daily activities as they are. And those patients included in this study were found to have improved attention and memory functions, but there was no change in planning and executive functions. So the improvement wasn't there for planning and executive functions. And BPRS is decreasing, and social functionality is increasing, and chronic patients can also use it and is found to be beneficial. So it raises the awareness of the individual in daily life. And for schizophrenic patients, could be it result in an exacerbation in the psychotic symptoms of the patient. This was the most important criticism or concern, we can say. Here, sometimes some paranoias about avatars could develop in patients, but in chronic patients or other patients there was no exacerbated psychosis. And it is more like cyber sickness and some nausea and some dizziness, and for diagnosis and treatment it can be used. This is a virtual reality study. You give the duty to go to a target place. I mean, the person gets on a bus and goes to the destination, and throughout this journey you ask the patient to talk about the facial expressions of the individuals he sees on the journey. So obsessive compulsive symptoms and depressive symptoms and the paranoia symptoms are found to decrease in this study. And about social relations, there is another research I would like to share with you, more like an animated research full of animations and trying to make definitions about the social relations of the individual and whether he takes the initiative or not. And here we can see that interest in social skills training is very high, and people want to get involved in the virtual reality studies. And vocal skills, nonverbal skills, and conversational skills are shown here. In nonverbal communication, there's no impact, actually, no change, and it's very hard to understand why. Maybe the process created with virtual reality is just focusing on changing the immediate interaction there and not further. Another study, a virtual reality integrated program for improving social skills. Here, the individual goes to a cafe, to a supermarket, by using virtual reality, both in positive, negative signs, and in terms of withdrawal and anxiety, there's a significant decrease, and in terms of avoidance as well. And in UK, there's this virtual reality that is being used. There's an avatar therapy for schizophrenic patients. Here, an avatar is created for the individual, and the individual communicates with the avatar. And the severity, frequency, and the discomfort created by hallucinations are found to decrease significantly. So what are we doing then? Before the pandemic, we were going really fast. However, the pandemic, of course, disturbed our studies, but what is different from other virtual reality studies is that we use daily activities and real individuals, 360-degree dimension, 3D computer shots is what we are using. And here you can see a virtual reality session, and this is my PhD student I'm working with about psychosocial functionality, schizophrenia. We have these real individuals in interacting with the individual in real life. You can see a cafe, transportation and in the supermarket. In these atmospheres, the individuals find themselves in, and they have contacts with other individuals. During the pandemic, we could recruit only 7 patients, assess only 7 patients. In terms of psychosocial functionality, there was a dramatic increase. In terms of PANS, there was no change actually, and in terms of social skills list, there is a tendency of change. It is totally correlated with psychosocial functionality. You can see the assessments of 7 individual patients. There's a significant improvement in some of them. You can see PANS, positive and negative subscales are shown here. There's no improvement in both. Even in some patients, there's some sort of deterioration that I would like to share with you. Another study of virtual reality that we have focuses on cessation of smoking. It was completed before the pandemic. In schizophrenic patients, you can see the results here, the virtual reality group and the control group. You can see all schizophrenic patients. We have the schizophrenic patients, schizophrenic control patients, normal patients, and normal control patients. And the Fagerstern nicotine addiction test was used to make an assessment. In schizophrenic patients, we have found a marked improvement, a more significant improvement. Conclusions: smartphone applications, web-based treatment programs, and virtual reality therapies can be used more in the future, and they can help improve the psychotic symptoms and the cognitive functions of the patients. However, we don't know what their impact will be on the negative symptoms. We have received support from TÜBİTAK, the scientific institution of Turkey, and last month this concept was introduced, metaverse as it is called. You can see here there's virtual reality goggles on the one hand, and computer programs, WhatsApp, Facebook and Instagram will be used for interaction. You all interact through these actually, but by just writing and sending messages in written form. But in the future we will be using virtual reality, and with our digital identities we will have a different sort of communication in a different atmosphere. And lastly, you can see here the leech treatment and other treatments that we have been carrying out in chronic diseases. I hope everything will be at a better point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for releasing it. It was excellent. Is Bo Chow presenting today? The third speaker? Or are we going straight to Dr. Agapong? This person speaking? Okay. So Vincent, I'm not sure whether Cloud has a presentation later on, maybe, but it's very early in the morning in Canada. So my guess is he's not able to present. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce my good friend and colleague, Professor Vincent Agapong. Vincent is somebody who has really taken a vision of the future for e-health in psychiatry and has done a lot of work on implementing e-health solutions. He recently moved from the University of Alberta, where he is a clinical professor, to take the head professorship at the University of Dalhousie in Eastern Canada in Nova Scotia. So welcome, Vincent. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Professor Greenshaw. So I'm talking today about supportive text message interventions in mental health. I have no conflict of interest to declare. So by way of overview, I would want to just highlight some of the evidence of effectiveness that we've gathered over the years. I'll zoom in to talk about 2 randomized controlled trials we completed in Alberta. Also highlight the results of our Text for Mood program evaluation. And during the pandemic, we launched the Text for Hope program to address psychological treatment gaps arising from the pandemic in Alberta. So I'll shed some light on some of the results and also talk very briefly about the implications for practice. So in terms of evidence, we've published quite a number of articles in peer-reviewed journals relating to results of randomized controlled trials and population level evaluation, which are mostly open access journals that anybody that would want to find out more can easily download and read. So I'm not going to waste too much time on that. I just want to talk about a randomized controlled trial that was published in BMC Psychiatry. It was a trial of supported text message intervention for patients with depression. So in this particular study, we randomized patients into an intervention group where they received twice daily supported text messages for 3 months. And then we had a control group who only received a thank you text message for participating in the study every 2 weeks. So we had a total of 35 patients analyzed in the intervention group and 38 in the control group. Some of the messages that were sent to patients included: what lies behind you and what lies before you are tiny matters compared to what lies within you. Have faith in yourself and success will be yours. Let's go. Letting go of resentment is a gift you can give to yourself. It will ease your journey immeasurably. Make peace with everyone, and happiness will be yours. So in terms of the results, we looked at 2 primary outcome measures. We looked at the mean change in the Beck's Depression Inventory Scale, as well as the self-reported quality of life using a visual analog scale where people are asked to rate their best health today on a scale of 0 to 1. So if you look at the Beck's Depression Inventory Scale, you realize that there was a mean difference between the intervention and the control group of -7.6. This was statistically significant, and the effect size was moderate. Similarly, if you look at the mean self-reported health index using the visual analog scale, you realize that the mean difference was again 10, which was also significant. Medium effect size also in favor of the intervention group. So this one of the trial participants. Sorry, let me.
Actually, Vincent, the voice is not coming over on the main internet. You may hear it on your computer, but we can't.
Oh, can you hear?
These text messages have been like a crutch, and I try to replace them with that negative.
Can you hear?
So it helps your worse.
It'd be good if you could turn up the volume a little bit.
So, and he introduced me to this study. He had asked me if I wanted to.
Can you hear?
Be a part of it. And
Yes.
So, I became a part of the pilot study and just loved them. Very.
So the other trial I want to talk about is also one that was done in Alberta, and we looked at the effectiveness of supported text messaging for patients with alcohol use disorder. So for this particular trial, we randomized patients who had completed the 28-day program at the Northern Lights inpatient treatment program to receive either twice daily supported text messages or, again, a thank you text message every fortnight for participating in the study. These are some of the examples of the text messages that were sent. Think of your sobriety as an opportunity to find new solutions in your life. Remember that the past is gone, and what you do next is what really matters. Another is the true joy of recovery is in the fellowship and community you share with others traveling the same path. So in terms of the primary outcome measure, we predetermined to be the cumulative abstinence duration at 3 months, which is the total number of days people had been abstinent from alcohol 3 months after they are discharged from the inpatient facility. So if somebody had a cumulative abstinence duration of 90 days, then it means they were not drinking. So if you look at the intervention group, cumulative abstinence duration was 83 days, the mean, standard deviation 19, and then for the control group, it was 73 days. So it was less in the control group, but it was not statistically significant. We achieved a trend towards significant in terms of the number of days to the first drink, which was a secondary outcome measure. So for the intervention group, it was 60 days, whereas in the control group, it was just 25 days. The units of alcohol per drinking day was not significant. So on foot of the success of these two trials and trials that we had conducted in Ireland, we learned what we call the Text for Mood program. This was actually a program that was launched to close the psychological treatment gap for those on a wait list to receive psychological counseling and those who were experiencing geographical barriers to access to psychological services. So all people needed to do was to text the word mood to a short code number, and then they enrolled on the program to receive daily supported text messages for 6 months. So after 6 weeks evaluating the program, we wanted to know why respondents signed up for the program, and more than half indicated to help them elevate their mood. Similarly, about 50% said they wanted to feel better. About a quarter said to help them to worry less. 90% indicated they always read the text messages. And if you look at it, it's almost 100% always or often read the text messages. 75% indicated the text messages made them feel supported. Other benefits included about 72% said they feel like they know how to stay on track when everyday stresses come. 76%, I feel that I'm the one in charge of managing my depression and anxiety. I feel hopeful I can manage issues of life was 80%, and also feeling connected to a support system was 75%. Other benefits, enhancing quality of life, 72%, improving the overall mental well-being was 83%, making better choices, 70%, feel like could bounce back if made mistakes, 77%, and feel like they are making a change, close to 60%. So when the pandemic hit the global stage in December of 2019, we did approach some funders and the health authority, and we launched another program, the Text for Mood program, in March of 2020, similarly to close the normal psychological treatment gap that the pandemic brought. To date, we've had over 60,000 Canadians enroll to receive daily supported text messages for 3 months on the Text for Hope program. So this one of the subscribers to the program.
and run coach as well. I recommended this program to almost all of my clients, and they all had something positive to say. What I really, really liked was that it was all clearly based on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and there was always some sort of a direction or instruction or something that you could do to make yourself feel better. One I think was like, what's the one thing that's worrying you the most? Write a list about what you can do to solve it, something to that effect. And that I appreciated because it was clear. I think it's really important to keep reminding people that this will end. One of the messages, I believe, was envision yourself in 1 or 2 years looking back on this. And I think that that reminder to look forward, for everybody to remember that eventually things will change. I think that having that daily message of hope and positivity is really important.
So for the Text for Hope program, we found that similar to our other messaging programs, about 86% of those who subscribed were female. Only about 12% identified as male. And we had about 1.1% identify as other gender. In terms of age classification, we had all ranges of the age classification subscribing to the program, predominantly those between the ages of 41 and 60 years old, but you can see that over 60 years and under 25 were very well represented. So in terms of some of the results, in terms of the ability of the Text for Hope program to reduce depression, anxiety, and stress, so this, the result for depression. At baseline, in terms of the prevalence rate for major depressive disorder as measured by the PHQ-9, it was around 39.8%. It dropped to 38.1%. And by 3 months, it had dropped to 33.8%. If you take anxiety, it was 45% at 6 weeks. It had dropped to 32%. And then by 3 months, it was 24%. And similarly, stress was 85%, dropped to 80%, and then dropped to 74%. We wanted to be sure that these reductions in prevalence rate were because of the intervention and not because of other environmental factors. So we took a cohort of subscribers who had completed the program for 6 weeks and new subscribers to the program. We compared the 6 weeks scores and prevalence rates for those who had received the intervention with the same parameters for those who had just enrolled during the same time frame. So if you look at things like even sleep disorder, you will realize it's 85% in the new subscribers. It was 76% in those who had received the messages for 6 weeks. Suicidal ideation was 26.6%. It was 16.9% in the intervention group. Depression prevalence was 52% in new subscribers, 36.8% in the control. Anxiety was 46.5%. It was 31.4% in the control, the intervention group. Stress was 88% in the control group and 78% in the intervention group. So clearly, we can be able to deduce from this naturalistic experiment that the supported text messages actually benefits our patients. Similarly, if you look at some of the satisfaction scores that we achieved, about 88% said they always read and reflect on the messages. In terms of coping with stress, 75% managing COVID-related issues, 73%. 72% thought messages were succinct, 77% thought they were positive, and 72% thought they were affirmative. In terms of improving mental well-being, 73%, feeling connected to a support system, 81%, coping with anxiety, 74%, and overall satisfaction of greater than 70%. So during the time of the pandemic, with all the lockdown, you can see how very important that, you know, health authorities should be able to support their citizens to feel connected to some sort of supportive system, which is very difficult, you know, with all the lockdown that have been implemented. So if you have a tool like this and you have 81% reporting, it made them feel connected to a support system, then it's a very good public health intervention. So I want to end with this video.
About half of young adults will experience mental health challenges, which can affect thinking, feeling, and behavior. Key stressors for mental disorders include societal influences, health problems, natural disasters, and personal circumstances. The treatment of mental ill health is frequently complex and costly, both for the patient and for health services. This can be due to the nature of the disorder and the high level of resources required. Mobile health technology offers a unique and innovative solution. Smartphone ownership is widespread. Text messaging is free for the receiver and requires little technical skill. Contemporary practice requires a robust empirical research base. This was rigorously undertaken for our supportive messaging programs. We used randomized, controlled studies and cross-sectional surveys to assess the efficacy of our supportive text messages. We conducted a randomized, controlled clinical trial in Dublin, Ireland. Participants with a diagnosis of major depressive disorder and alcohol use disorder were randomly selected to receive twice-daily supportive text messages for 3 months. The effect size for the intervention was large, with a statistically significant difference in the Beck's Depression Inventory Scale scores and a trend for a greater total number of days abstinent from alcohol in favour of the supportive text message group. A second randomized controlled clinical trial in Canada examined patients with major depressive disorder. They received twice-daily supportive text messages for 3 months. A statistically significant difference in key metrics was seen. Based on the encouraging results of these 2 trials, we developed the Text for Mood, Text for Support, Text for Hope, Text for PTSI, Text for Wellbeing, Text for Healthy Aging, More Good Days, and positive mental health programs, designed for broader populations who are struggling with mental health problems. Multiple language versions of some programs have also been developed. The Text for Mood and Text for Support program evaluations established that most participants felt the text messages made them more hopeful about managing issues in their lives, in charge of managing depression and anxiety, and allowed them to feel connected to a support system. Most felt Text for Mood and Text for Support improved their overall mental well-being. Participants in the Text for Hope evaluation self-reported significant improvements using the General Anxiety Disorder 7 scale, the Patient Health Questionnaire 9 scale, and Perceived Stress Scale 10. Participants were rated as having significantly lower risk of moderate to high stress, anxiety, depressive symptoms, suicidal thoughts, and disturbed sleep. Daily supportive text messages are a feasible and acceptable way of delivering psychological interventions to the public with mental health problems. Dr. Vincent Agyapong's Global Mental Health Research Group worked with partners to develop and evaluate this innovative tool to support people who have mental health problems. Resilience and Hope present an opportunity to help close the psychological treatment gap for those awaiting treatment or as additional support.
So in terms of current developments, we are working on another program called the Text for Support, which will deliver diagnosis-specific messages to patients with addiction and mental health problems. We are also working with partners in the Obstetrics and Gynecology Department of the University of Alberta on a Text for Menopause program, which will provide psychological support and psychoeducation for depression in menopausal women. We are also working on a Text for Healthy Aging program to provide psychological support and education for seniors. And recently, we've started working on a Text for Black Youth Mental Health initiative, which will be aiming to provide psychological support and mental health literacy for Black youth across Canada. So in terms of implications of supported text messaging for practice, The program has been recognized by the World Health Organization affiliated organization, the Mental Health Innovations Network. Text messages are very cost effective. It costs only about $10 to deliver daily supported text messages for patients for up to a year, compared to about $1,800 for 12 CBT sessions in Canada. In terms of equity, there's high mobile phone penetration rate in Canada and around the world. Text messages are free to end users, can be used on any mobile technology, regardless of sophistication, does not require technological skills on the part of the user, and does not require expensive data plans. Similarly, there are no wait lists. Thousands of people can enroll simultaneously. There are no geographical barriers to access, and we can be able to use it to reduce the need for face-to-face counseling, as many of those who are receiving the messages, as we saw from the results of both the clinical trials and the population level program evaluation, actually improve and may not require the face-to-face therapy. So there are so many people who've contributed to this work. There are at least about 50 co-authors on various publications, and also funders in Ireland and Canada that I would like to acknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we do have some time in this session because one of the speakers was unable to attend, and I believe that Dr. Agupong and Dr. Alptekin are available. It may be that Dr. Abaji is, here he is, still around. So I'd like to make some framing comments and then open the floor to questions, and we can spend a little time if the audience has questions. I think Dr. Abaji opened the symposium by talking about optimism and the potential for gains as we move forward in the future. There are many things that are relevant here. Dr. Alptekin began with a very moving comment about those physicians in psychiatry who've been lost during COVID. And COVID has been a tremendous stress on everybody. It's also been something that pushed our world across the digital divide. And how many of us will be doing clinical activities on Zoom, using remote media to work and collaborate. It wasn't a choice that we made willingly, it was something forced upon everybody, but it's changed the environment. The virtual reality space that Dr. Alptekin reviewed is really quite amazing. If you were to look across the world in this digital psychiatry space, you would see bold ambitions around virtual reality, and many of the examples that Kirksa gave to us are really exciting. Together with that, and the idea of avatars, there's a lot of work being done on chatbots. So imagine you're not talking to a therapist, but you're actually talking to a machine learning entity that has an identity. Getting into that virtual reality space, the ability to use machine learning to identify symptoms and provide some kind of support. The quite impressive programs in this asynchronous text messaging system that's been initiated and developed and implemented by Dr. Agupong is actually very encouraging. As somebody who's been sitting there watching it grow and been involved in the research, I've actually been very surprised at how effective it is when a patient or a member of the general public is simply receiving information. There is no conversation there. This is somebody receiving a text message on a daily basis and having a clinically meaningful response to a positive message. If that can be effective, imagine how much you can add to that if you had an interactive digital interaction, a conversation, and the possibility to do things in virtual reality, the possibility to do things with a chatbot that speaks or something you type to. The possibilities are amazing, so I think there really is an opportunity for optimism. So we have three experts on the panel. If somebody could give Dr. Alptekin a microphone, then he would have a microphone to respond to at any time. Can you do that, please? Can you provide him with a microphone? If you want to stand up there, that would be okay. I thought it would be more convenient for you, but that's great. So we're open to questions from the floor. I'll start with a question to Kuksa. These initial pieces that you presented to us, in English I'd use the word tantalizing because the potential is there. It's not quite come into this state of fruition. But in the next 10 years or so, I think we'll see some tremendous advances. Do you think that this will be more effective in some disorders than others? The symposium focuses on schizophrenia and psychosis, and you gave us some examples. Very difficult problem based on social interactions and that kind of thing. Could you make some comments about what you think the future will bring?
Is this a general question, Andy?
Oh, it's a question to Dr. Alptekin, because he had presented on virtual reality. So how effective do you think it will be in the next 10 years?
And the sound is not good here, and so I couldn't understand.
Okay. If you some of the speakers have found that if they sit down there with headphones because there's too much feedback on the microphone.
It's not good here.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody could ask that question?
Could you repeat your question?
Yes. And if somebody could get you some headphones, the quality is better on these in both languages. Yeah. My question is that you gave a wonderful description of the initial possibilities. I'm wondering what your vision of the future is for the next 10 years with technology development and clinical implementation. A difficult question, I know.
Do you want to ask what will happen in the future?
Yes.
Using virtual reality?
Yes.
Okay. In general, I guess in 5 or 10 years, many people will use virtual reality glasses. But the problem, there is especially some problems related to ethics. And this is a great problem, and we don't know, I don't know how it can be solved, because I can easily take pictures when I may have some glasses like this, and in these glasses there may be some virtual reality programs, and I can easily use these glasses. I know that some industry has developed this type of glasses, but they haven't launched yet because of some ethical problems. If they can solve these ethical problems, I imagine that many people will try to use. For example, 20 years before, we couldn't estimate that we will talk each other easily. Also, we may see each other by using mobile phones. And I think especially metaverse launching may provoke us that we may easily communicate within each others by using our some avatars, and maybe instead of writing text message, I will see and leave my friends in the virtual reality programs. My question in my mind that how can we use this development in the treatment of psychosocial functioning of schizophrenia patients. I think they may improve some functions, but I don't know either if they will be effective in the improvement of the especially negative symptoms and especially in the cognitive disabilities of the patients.
Thank you very much. Adam and Vincent, would you like to add any comments?
I think the pandemic has, as you indicated, made it imperative that we make advances in the use of technology, and virtual reality is certainly one of them. In addition to ethical issues that's been raised, I think the other issue is also privacy concerns. But I think as we continue to advance technologically, those privacy issues also get addressed, because I mean clearly we are now using more and more technology, and therefore security and privacy issues are also there's a lot of investment going into those to ensure that they are not as much of a concern as they used to be in the past.
If I may add to what was said, I mean the question that was asked was 10 years from now, how could this be implemented? I think it's also very important then to look at 20 years back, what sort of technological innovations in the field of medicine that were spoken about that are now actually have been fully implemented. So I think it's quite promising. The data that was presented for the virtual reality is quite promising, especially for patients who have ADHD. There are other clinical indications for it on those patients who have PTSD. So it is quite promising, and I would see that some of the challenges, in addition to what was mentioned, is the availability of this technology and how it can be easily accessible, to a lot of individuals who are suffering from various disorders. And it is certainly going to transition from something of a hybrid between a real face-to-face intervention, complemented by the virtual reality. So it is quite promising.
Happy to take any questions from the floor. Anybody has a question? One of the issues in this area, everybody in psychiatry will face this, the issue of dealing with privacy, security, and what we do with the virtual world and internet. You have to deal with it even with virtual consults. Most people don't realize, even people who are highly qualified, that when you use a smartphone and you agree to use a browser, I'm sure there must be Turkish equivalents, but the international ones like Google Explorer and Mozilla Firefox, when you agree to use those on your mobile device, you give your privacy away because you accept their terms. And their terms include the ability to record your voice, to record your emails, to switch your phone on and off, to take videos, and to transmit that information at no cost to you. So it's very interesting that we wrestle with the ethics of privacy and confidentiality, where in the real world of transactions on the internet, most individuals have already given their privacy away. When I talk to people about AI and health, and mental health particularly, I always ask them, do you care more about your health or your money? And most people say, well, that's a difficult question. But people who do internet banking have already accepted the privacy standards on the internet. And if it's possible to do it for financial transactions, it should be possible to do it for health. But one of the things we have to do is we have to change our cultural view. It's very challenging. The whole issue of equity, privacy, and confidentiality that Dr. Abaji raised in the first presentation. We all have to participate in that conversation. And if we have too high barriers, it will prevent the value that can come from clinical implementation. Dr. Agapong's approach is actually very smart with a smartphone because you're giving information to the patient and you're surveying the patient with their permission, but there's no identity stuff that's shared. It's asynchronous. It's one way to the patient. The things that we're looking at in the future, Dr. Alptekin's presentation, for example, in the virtual reality world, there's an interaction both ways. And I think that's where the real difficulties lie. Everybody's interested in this because it's good for health, but it's also good business, and a lot of money is to be made from health and AI. There are some individuals like Dr. Agapong who's pushing this technology out in a not-for-profit sense for the public good. But there are many companies that stand to make a lot of money out of this. So for psychiatry, it's a really important area. Really, it will be an interesting conversation going forward. Any comments from the audience? Don't be shy. Now is your opportunity to dive into the conversation if you have a question.
I totally agree with your comments. My question is, in the future, do you think that the technology can easily replace the attitudes of the psychiatrists? What do you think?
I think it will have to, and that may seem like a terrible thing to say, but if you're a person with a mental health problem, how difficult is it to see a psychiatrist? Psychiatrists in the audience and on the symposium here, we know that we have a capacity problem. We do not see patients frequently enough. We make patients wait. They can't see us whenever they want to. I don't have a clinical practice, but for those of you who do. But imagine if you had a substitute, somebody that could represent the psychiatrist, an avatar that could be programmed to function well enough to support the patient. That's so desirable from an equity point of view, because the way, the World Health Organization, as we know, identified mental health as the biggest problem in the global burden of health. But people have not invested in training enough psychiatrists. And if you think about the way you practice as psychiatrists, you have very specialized interaction. You don't have the luxury of talking to your patients, supporting your patients in daily living. Nursing staff does that, or social workers and so on. So there has to be that digitization of support. I firmly believe that. Yeah. And that's going to be really difficult because professionals hate the idea that machines will replace them.
Yeah, this is the way why Thomas Insel has launched his own company and trying to develop some products.
Yeah. It needs cultural change, yeah. Right? The culture has to change of what we expect. We don't mind a computer flying a plane for us. It happens all the time. Pilots switch on the automatic pilot and they land the plane. The possibilities are great, but we need to test the technology and develop it, and we need to have an interest and an opening. So these talks for me have been wonderful because Adam began with a general idea about optimism, where we can go, what we can do. And Kuxa gave us this fantastically rich vision of virtual reality and gave us some examples of how it may or may not work in the context of psychosis, but we're at the very beginning. And then Vincent's presentation shows us how a really simple intervention, not really that simple, it's based on CBT and a complex technology, but easy to implement, and $10 for a whole year of therapy. It's not perfect, but it's really helping people. That kind of access, that kind of equity is really important. Think about all of the developing countries in the world, the penetrance of smartphones. Vincent and I have talked about global health, and let's take West Africa, for example. Adam is in northern Nigeria today. Cell phone penetration is very high. Cell phone access is pretty much universal. So if you can get access that way, you can connect to a lot of people, provide a lot of support very cheaply and very quickly, in places where right now there is no support. So if I was a betting person, and I'm not, I don't gamble, but if I was to gamble, I would not just put your money on this, I'd put my own money on this, because I think this is something that's really going to happen, and it's going to be very positive if we get it right. But as clinicians, you have to think carefully and not reject it. Cook's question about will AI replace psychiatrists, that's a very annoying question. But when you think about caring for your patients, that's a really good thing to think about if it was done properly. So we're kind of wrapping up. I'll ask the panelists, do you have any other comments to add? I think it's been a really good session. I'm very pleased with your contributions today. Maybe we'll go around one at a time. Adam, would you like to make a closing statement briefly?
I would like to just add a few things. And first, thank for the organizers for inviting us to talk about something very important, but also to add in to what you've already contributed regarding whether or not artificial intelligence are going to replace psychiatrists in the future. I think it's very important for us to know that we need to enhance our diagnostic accuracy. There was a study that was done, just very quickly, there was a study that was done, two of them, very large one in China and the other one in Canada, where misdiagnosis of depression, which is really the bread and butter of psychiatry, nearly 92% of patients, 870 patients that were seen and diagnosed with depression, 92% of them had no major depressive episode. So this is really very scary when you look at it. And the same study was replicated in China, and the percentage was around 75%. So using machine learning, predictive analytics is to enhance us to treat our patients better. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Vincent?
I also like to thank the organizers for a very wonderful session. They put together a very interesting conference, very educative and informative. I think from all that we've heard today, it's very important that health authorities, governments focus their investments on technological innovations that will help close the psychological treatment gap. As Professor Greenshaw indicated, we would never have enough psychiatrists, we would never have enough psychologists, trauma therapists, but we can be able to leverage the power of technology to support the population in far greater ways than any number of healthcare professionals that we can be able to train, and the cost of training those healthcare professionals will be much more than the cost of investing in the technology to provide the care.
Thank you. And the last word to our distinguished professor from Izmir.
Developments in technology may help us and also our patients to improve their difficulties in their daily lives. I think so.
So please join me in thanking these excellent speakers and for this very interesting interactive session today. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.